Good evening. I want to thank everyone for coming to the regularly scheduled open meeting of the DOA group of Alcoholics Anonymous, 11 p.m. EST. My name is Marty, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm your chair for tonight. Let us open the meeting with a moment of silence for the sick and suffering alcoholic, followed by the Serenity prayer for those who know and care to join. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Chapter 5. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed, and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, that God could and would, if he were sought.
Thanks to all who listened. If you would like to share, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Tonight's topic is from the audio Grapevine. I'll set it up now.
Welcome to the January 2011 issue of Grapevine magazine. We start with a note from the managing editor.
At what point did you admit you were powerless over alcohol? According to Bill W., writing in the March 1960 AA Grapevine, this simply means that all of us have to hit bottom and hit it hard and lastingly. That bottom comes in many forms, and the essays in this month's special section are particularly poignant accounts of powerlessness. In The young female author of Puppet of Destruction writes, ironically, my bottom was not when I lost my apartment, my job, my boyfriend, or the respect of my family, and goes on to share that her complete emptiness of all emotion brought her to step one. These and other stories like these remind us that while the road to admitting powerlessness may be rough, the key to recovery can be as simple as learning to be normal. Service takes many forms, and sending your stories and art to AA Grapevine is one of them. We are now accepting submissions for the 2012 AA Grapevine Wall Calendar Photo Contest. Get someone's day started right with an inspiring image. Learn more in this issue, or visit aagrapevine.org. In fellowship, the managing editor, me@aagrapevine.org.
Powerless. The imperfectionist. Surrendering to the moment brings personal victory.
When I first came through these doors, I was defeated, totally ready to do what was necessary to stay sober. I didn't know that I was a child, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I just knew that I was an uncontrolled drinker who had made a mess of her life. AA was the last recourse. I had dabbled in Al-Anon and also in adult children of alcoholics. It was so nice to blame problems on parents, environment, and genetics. About 6 months into sobriety and step 3, I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. That seemed pretty simple to me, as I already had a God and could understand the direction of the Big Book. I did not understand that this was only the beginning of this step for me. Nonetheless, I really thought about this decision. To give one's life over to the care of another entity was difficult for a self-centered, judgmental, fearful, non-trusting control freak and perfectionist. However, I made the intellectual decision and moved on to step 4. As most of us were, I was told to get into service work and get out of myself. So I made coffee, became a general service rep, an alternate district committee member, and then a district committee member for various committees. In spite of that, I became fearful of the person I thought I was and didn't know who I could be. My defects and problems with others were hanging on. I couldn't handle service work at the district or intergroup level. My sponsor said I was doing great, and I thought it must have been true, as others began to ask me to sponsor them. I hung around on the edges, not really understanding how to live the program. After 8 years, I decided the meeting of the group I was in just wasn't doing it, and I was going to drink if I didn't change something. I moved to a town where there was great AA, and I got another sponsor. Much against my better judgment, I decided to do the steps again with her, because I was asked. I really needed something else, but what? While redoing the third step, I realized that just deciding that I made the decision was one thing, but actually putting the step into action and living it was quite another. This step became the first of the action steps. I began offering every day to my higher power and saying the third step prayer. I went about doing things somewhat differently, but I didn't really understand that my instincts for doing the right thing needed to be worked on. I had lived over 50 years thinking and rationalizing like a drunk. All my crazy thoughts made perfect sense to me. At this point, having done the third step at least twice, I thought I was on the way. Oops, I said the prayer and pretty much forgot it throughout my day. So, there I was, still restless, irritable, and discontent, and trying to make things better. That was the problem. I was trying to make things better. I, who had become an adult with all those defects of character, was trying to make myself better by praying for what I wanted. Is that insanity? No wonder my interior thoughts, actions, and responses weren't changing. I was trying to change myself. Suddenly, I realized that what I had to do was bring my HP into my life as often as I could during the day, and ask him to do for me what I could not do for myself. Slowly, by keeping my mouth shut and working on keeping my heart open, I have learned many things. I keep going back and reading the Big Book and the 12 and 12, and wondering how I could have missed it all for so long. Then I realize that I am a work in progress, and I need to just be willing to continue to work each step as often as I need to. Some practical values I have applied to this step have come out of my decision, prayers, willingness, and other AA members. When I turn my life over to God, it needs to be moment to moment, so that He can give me the guidance to do the right, loving thing. This is hard work. Although I may have the right answer, it is not for me to give the answer. My opinion is unimportant. I am to let others find their opinions and ways. This was really hard for a know-it-all. I am not to criticize anyone's life, even when they ask. No. Imagine how I would feel if my messed-up life was criticized by others. I am not to judge or talk about others. This is all difficult stuff and requires practice. Believe me, there ain't no perfect for me or others in this step. I have learned that my life in sobriety is to let my higher power do the best he can with me, be of service to others, and let others be what they will. That is really hard when one has the ego and tendency toward perfectionism that I do. After years of working this step, as I also continue with steps 10, 11, and 12, I have finally realized what I think Bill W. and Dr. Bob were saying. I am meant to keep practicing and daily reaffirming my decision to turn everything over. I can honestly look at the improvements I've made and see where I need to improve. I need to look at and acknowledge what progress my God has accomplished and ask Him to continue the work. What a freedom I have found in letting my loved ones be whom they want to be, to let the AA community have its natural conflicts, to set boundaries on myself, to extend love and faith and hope to all. Finally, I see that step 3 for me means to get out of the way and let God do it all, to stop frustrating myself by trying to be the person I think He wants me to be, and to let God mold me. Let me be directed to do the right and good thing, and it will happen. It took a lot of practice and redirection to know truly that I am in charge of nothing, and I better live that way if I want to stay sober. Today, I know that as long as I reaffirm Step 3 on a daily and momentary basis, I can stay sober and have a freedom, happiness, and serenity that I never thought possible. A.L., Troy, Montana.
Powerless. Puppet of destruction. A promising young woman drinks herself past the point of no return.
I loved the way alcohol made me feel, plain and simple. Always the exception to the rule, I was terminally unique, or what we like to call an egomaniac with low self-esteem. However, alcohol allowed me to act like everyone else. Once the booze hit my bloodstream, I fell head over heels, tumbling down the rabbit hole to a universe in which I was prettier, funnier, more intelligent, and, most importantly, outgoing. The social lubricant I so desperately needed, or so I thought, had found its way into my life. As Bill W. said, I had arrived. The affair I had with alcohol was exciting and tumultuous. I lapped up every drop of the glorious feeling of flight the drug gave me. I dipped dangerously close to peaks and tops, and grazed the fields, almost touching the ground. Skimming the water, my stomach would flip, knowing that I was eminently close to danger. And when at last I would escape, unscathed for the most part, the feeling of invincibility was as intoxicating as the drink itself. Alas, this era would not last forever. Nothing does, especially for us alcoholics. Eventually, I crashed and burned. Looking back, there was a line that I knew existed. I knew my father had crossed it. I knew my brother had crossed it. I had fair reason to assume that many others in my genetic line had as well. I asserted that I would be different, if not for the sake of my mother, then for the embarrassment I believed came with being an alcoholic. Alcohol was my companion for a fast and furious 6 years. I don't feel the need to justify my place within the rooms, because I know the true depths to which alcohol took me. How much or how long I drank doesn't matter. What does matter is the shell of a human being that I became, paying rent, maintaining employment, and basically all responsibilities were optional. Fermenting in my filthy apartment for weeks at a time and struggling within a dark hole of apathy was not optional. During this time, bringing knives into the bathtub in contemplation of slitting my wrists was a common occurrence. I was in so much pain because I couldn't live with or without the very substance that I thought integral to functioning in the world. If I drank, I wasn't a good person. If I didn't drink, I couldn't stand living in my body. I was hopeless. As far as I could see, there was no escape. No solution existed. For me, that didn't mark the end. It was, however, my first realization that I was powerless over alcohol. In taking the first drink, I knew that I became a puppet of destruction, bending to every masochistic whim my disease demanded. And let me just say, it did demand. However, the deepest, blackest, loneliest days of my life still couldn't beat me into submission. And simply stated, not enough pain equals no change for this alcoholic. Ironically, my bottom was not when I lost my apartment, my job, my boyfriend, or the respect of my family. No, I hit the depths of despair when I could no longer feel any emotion at all. I could not get any lower unless I was buried. And in truth, that destination was not far off. I transformed from a young girl full of talent and promise to a selfish, self-seeking, walking corpse, preying on those who had one weakness, their love for me. My insides were a rotten and putrid mess, eating me alive, and I could no longer fool those who cared about me into thinking that I was fine. I was far from fine. I was a zombie, a bag of bones, operated and owned by poison. In admitting helplessness, the words that I uttered, although falling from my lips, were not my own. Today, I know they came from a source outside of and greater than myself. My mother was a puddle on the floor, and I couldn't even produce a single tear. I was hollow. I was empty. I was simply not there. For some reason, "I need help" found its way out of my mouth, the very same mouth that had proclaimed its independence from this disease as a child was seeking rescue from it. How had that happened? When had I passed the point of no return? Today, I know with certainty that point was when I took my first sip. I was born an alcoholic. When I was born into the rooms of AA, I became an alcoholic in recovery. Many may scoff at the words "grateful to be an alcoholic." Those people simply do not understand. Being an alcoholic in recovery has opened the door of self-awareness for me. I have a keen knowledge of myself and my disease. I have a library of resources for any problem I may have. Alcoholics Anonymous is a program of beautiful paradoxes. In the steps, we surrender to win, give in order to receive, and find power within our powerlessness. In accepting ownership of our thoughts and actions as powerful tools of intention, married with the notion that we remain powerless over everything else, we carve a direct path to freedom. Alcoholics Anonymous teaches us this. The timeless juxtaposition of finding power within powerlessness is one of the greatest assets of this sober alcoholic, and I am grateful for it. Kelly S., West Hempstead, New York.
If you would like to share on topic or whatever is on your heart or anything that is helping you in your sobriety, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Thanks again.